Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most insane mega ramp in GTA 5 history.
Coming out later
I'm
in
talking
life,
sky-high stunts, zero gravity jumps,
I stared
and
at the thumbnail
crashes
for a
so
full
wild.
minute,
Buckle
my
up
cursor
because
hovering
this
over the
ride's
video,
gonna be absolute
my heart
chaos.
pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. I'd never searched for anything LGBTQ related. I'd been happily married to my husband Tom for 8 years. I had no conscious reason why this video would appear in my feed, but something deep in my chest whispered, "Click it, I'm Emma, I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago, an algorithm knew I was gay before I did." This isn't a story about technology being creepy, though it is that. This isn't about privacy violations, though those exist. This is about the terrifying possibility that our digital footprints can reveal truths about ourselves that we're not ready to face. The YouTube recommendation was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, my social media feeds began shifting in subtle ways. Instagram started showing me ads for gender-neutral clothing brands I'd never heard of. My Spotify Discover Weekly suddenly included indie folk songs with lyrics about loving who you're supposed to love. Netflix began recommending romantic comedies with female leads I found myself watching with unusual intensity. At first, I dismissed it all as coincidence. Algorithms are wonky, right? Sometimes they just get things wrong. But then Amazon suggested I might be interested in The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, a novel about a Hollywood actress's hidden relationships with women. When I clicked not interested, the algorithm doubled down, showing me Red, a crayon story, a children's book about being true to your inner self. I started paying attention to my own digital behavior, and what I found made me uncomfortable. Without realizing it, I'd been lingering longer on photos of women than men on Instagram. My search history showed subtle patterns. Female friendship versus romantic feelings. How to know if you're attracted to someone. And late-night Google queries like, is it normal to think about women this much? Searches I didn't remember making. Questions my subconscious was asking while my conscious mind was focused on my marriage, my career, my normal life. The most unsettling moment came when TikTok's algorithm served me a video titled, "Signs You Might Be a Late-Blooming Lesbian." I hadn't searched for it, hadn't interacted with LGBTQ content, hadn't given any conscious signal that I was questioning my sexuality. But I watched the entire 15-minute video. Twice, the creator listed experiences that felt like she was reading my diary. Always feeling like you were performing femininity rather than living it. Being more interested in female characters than male love interests in movies. Having intense friendships with women that felt different from your other relationships. Marrying a good man because it felt like what you were supposed to do, not because you felt passionate attraction. Every point hit like a physical blow, because every point described my life perfectly. That night, I fell down a rabbit hole of research about how recommendation algorithms work. What I learned was both fascinating and terrifying. These systems don't just track what we click. They analyze how long we linger on content, what we scroll past quickly, what we save but never return to. They measure microexpressions through our front-facing cameras, if we've given permission. They track typing patterns, search hesitations, and even how long we pause before clicking. Dr. Sophia Noble, author of Algorithms of Oppression, explains that these systems are designed to predict our desires before we're fully conscious of them. They're not reading our minds. They're reading our behavior patterns and comparing them to millions of other users who followed similar digital paths. In my case, the algorithm had detected subtle changes in my behavior months before I consciously acknowledged them. The extra second I spent looking at certain photos, the way I'd start typing searches and then delete them, the fact that I'd unconsciously been clicking on content featuring strong female relationships. My digital footprint was telling a story I wasn't ready to hear. The turning point came 3 months after that first YouTube recommendation. I was at my sister's wedding, watching her dance with her husband, when I realized I wasn't feeling joy or envy. I was feeling relief that I wasn't them, that I didn't have to pretend to be swept away by romantic love for a man anymore. That night, alone in my hotel room, I finally clicked on a video the algorithm had been showing me for weeks. Compulsory heterosexuality explained. Watching that video was like someone had given me a decoder ring for my entire life. Every relationship, every feeling I dismissed or rationalized, every moment I'd felt like I was acting a role rather than living authentically, it all suddenly made sense. I was gay. I'd probably always been gay. I'd just been so deeply conditioned to perform heterosexuality that I'd fooled even myself. But the algorithm hadn't been fooled. Somehow, through tracking microscopic changes in my digital behavior, YouTube's recommendation engine had detected my questioning sexuality months before I consciously acknowledged it. The system had seen patterns in my data that matched millions of other women who'd gone through similar realizations. It had been trying to help me understand myself. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. Coming out to myself was devastating enough, but coming out to Tom, a genuinely good man who'd done nothing wrong except marry someone who didn't understand her own sexuality, was agonizing. Our divorce was amicable, but heartbreaking. Tom deserved someone who could love him fully, and I deserved to stop pretending to be someone I wasn't. But here's the strange part. Throughout this entire process, the algorithms continued to support me in ways that felt almost supernatural. YouTube recommended videos about navigating divorce with compassion. Spotify created playlists it seemed designed for crying and healing. Netflix suggested documentaries about women who'd rebuilt their lives after major realizations. Even Amazon got in on the act, recommending books about starting over, finding yourself, and embracing authentic identity. It was like my phone had become a supportive friend who understood exactly what I needed to hear at each stage of my journey. 6 months later, I'm living alone for the first time in my adult life, and I've never been happier. I'm dating women, something I never imagined I'd say, and every relationship feels more authentic than anything I experienced during my 8 years of marriage. But the experience has left me with profound questions about privacy, self-knowledge, and the role of technology in our most personal discoveries. On one hand, the algorithmic outing was deeply invasive. These systems had analyzed my behavior in ways I hadn't consented to, making predictions about my most private thoughts and feelings. The fact that YouTube knew I was gay before I did feels like a violation of the most intimate kind. On the other hand, those recommendations may have accelerated a self-discovery that could have taken years longer without algorithmic intervention. How many people are living inauthentically because they don't have access to the content that could help them understand themselves? Dr. Zainab Tufekci, a researcher at Columbia University, argues that recommendation algorithms can serve as identity amplifiers, systems that reflect back to us aspects of ourselves we might not consciously recognize. They can help us discover new interests, communities, and even fundamental truths about our identity. But they can also trap us in filter bubbles or push us toward conclusions we're not ready for. The ethical implications are staggering. Should algorithms be allowed to make predictions about our sexual orientation, our mental health, our deepest secrets? What happens when these systems know things about us that we don't want to know or aren't ready to know? And what about the people whose data trails lead algorithms to incorrect conclusions? What if the system had decided I was struggling with something I wasn't and bombarded me with content that created problems rather than solved them? I think about Tom sometimes and wonder if the algorithms knew our marriage was in trouble before either of us did. Did they detect something in his behavior too? Was he getting recommendations for divorce lawyers while I was getting recommendations for coming out videos? The most unsettling possibility is that we're all walking around with digital shadows that know us better than we know ourselves. Every click, every pause, every micro-expression is data that can be analyzed, categorized, and used to predict our future choices. Are we losing the ability to discover ourselves organically? Are we becoming dependent on algorithms to tell us who we are? Or are these systems simply reflecting back truths we've always carried, but we're afraid to examine? I don't have answers to these questions, but I do know that my relationship with technology has fundamentally changed. I'm more aware of how my digital behavior reveals my inner state. I'm more intentional about what I consume online. And I'm both grateful for and terrified by the algorithms that seem to understand me better than I understand myself. Maybe that's the real lesson here. In an age of algorithmic prediction, self-awareness has become more important than ever. We need to understand ourselves deeply enough to recognize when technology is reflecting our authentic desires versus manipulating them. Because if we don't know ourselves, something else will claim to know us instead. So here's my question for anyone reading this. Have you ever received a recommendation that felt eerily personal, like the algorithm knew something about you that you hadn't fully acknowledged? Do you think these systems help us discover our authentic selves? Or do they manipulate us into becoming who they predict we'll be? And most importantly, in a world where algorithms can detect our secrets before we can, how do we maintain agency over our own self-discovery? What would you do